So before we actually get into today's video, I want to talk to you guys about jerseyfifa.com, because as you can see, they have hooked me up with a load of fresh shirts for this year's World Cup. I've got the England home kit, the England away kit, and also a nice little retro shirt. And you can do exactly the same if you head to jerseyfifa.com using the link in the description down below. They also do the same for club football as well, the latest home shirts, away shirts, but also some really nice retro kits. If you are interested, head to the link in the description down below and use code jerseyfifa for a discount when you order. Now into the video. Hey guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where we are back again with more World Cup content, and again in this round of 16, which has produced some really good matches already. Today we are talking about England's 3-0 win over Senegal, which has set up a really tasty quarterfinal against France. Now, if you want a preview on that game, let me know in the comments down below. Personally, I would really love to cover it. I think it's quite an interesting puzzle to try and figure out. So if you want that video, make sure to leave a comment down below, let me know that's what you want, but also make sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications on to make sure that you don't miss the video when it gets uploaded. But before we can do that, we need to talk about how England won this game. Because for me, they were deserving of their 3-0 victory. The scoreline might have flattered them a little bit, but I think they certainly deserve to win. So I want to talk about why they deserve to win, how Southgate set them up, and who some of the key men were. Because at times, this was really good from England. At times, it weren't so great, but there were spells during this game where England were really impressive. However, actually, early on in the game, they did struggle. And for the first 25 minutes, England found themselves in a real test, and they were struggling to get the ball moving forward. Now, the reason for this was because Senegal used a slightly different approach with the way that they pressed, and rather than pressing as a front two, they very much used an attacking midfielder to sit on Declan Rice. And with England then pushing their midfielders further forward, it meant that Senegal was essentially man-to-man in the midfield, which massively reduces the options on the ball for someone like Harry Maguire and John Stones at the back. And this was a problem that England really struggled with throughout the first 30-35 minutes of the game. And as a result, it actually led to some really big chances for Senegal early on, and they will be kicking themselves. Had they taken one of these chances, this could have been a very different game, because there were a couple of situations where Maguire played a pass in here which just wasn't on. John Stones had a couple as well. Declan Rice had a couple. England forcing the ball way too much. And as a result, it's unforced errors. They're giving the ball away where they didn't need to. Now, people will look at the expected goals after the game and say, oh, well, Senegal maybe should have won. Senegal were good going forward. I actually thought that England defended well. The problem that England had was that in these areas, they were giving it away, and that leaves you exposed. When England were set up in team defence, defensively they actually looked quite good, and they stopped Senegal really well. It was in these situations here where they're trying to force a pass into an area where it just isn't on. And when that happens, we know this is such a dangerous position to lose the ball. When you have so many players push higher, of course that's going to be a problem. So that is something that England cannot afford to do in their next game. I thought in this situation, in this scenario, Declan Rice could have done a little bit more. I think maybe it was tactical instruction from the manager to not move position. But I think he could have done more to make an effort to get on the ball. Whether that was dropping in between the centre-backs, something like this, to kind of create this 3 versus 2, or just moving across side to side. I think he could have done a little bit more to make himself the passing option. But that didn't really happen. And what it allowed Senegal to do was be really aggressive in the way that they were defending. Because England couldn't progress the ball down the centre, but for large periods, they just kept forcing it. They kept trying to go down the middle. That weren't really an option at this moment in the game. And England was screaming out for some quality out wide because of the fact that they were struggling so much to progress the ball through the middle. And that was eventually what we saw after about 30 minutes. It happened for the first time. Now, something that I was talking about in my preview was that England needed to use these wider areas. Senegal are going to defend the narrow areas quite well. England need to exploit the flanks, and then eventually Senegal will react to that, try and defend the flanks more, then you can expose the middle of the pitch. And eventually that is what happened. It just took about 30 minutes too long. And it came from quality play from Luke Shaw, Phil Foden, Jude Bellingham and Harry Kane. Now, Phil Foden on the left wing isn't actually the player that I went for. I went for Marcus Rashford for his threat in behind. However, we saw that Southgate was right with his inclusion of Phil Foden, and I think what was important about Foden's performance was his link play and his combination play down this side of the pitch. And like I said, we saw it for the goal with Shaw, Foden, Harry Kane coming into this area as well, and then Jude Bellingham making the run past. Now, the reason that this was able to work was because that Koulibaly was extremely aggressive in the way that he was defending. Now, if we go back to my preview, I didn't think that was going to be the case, because I thought that it would leave Senegal far too exposed in behind. And so I was wrong with how they approached it, but I was right with why they shouldn't have done it in this way. Because we saw Koulibaly being really aggressive, and Kane individually on the ball was just absolutely brilliant. So when he got the ball in this sort of area from someone like Phil Foden, Koulibaly being aggressive, it leaves this massive space open here, And in Jude Bellingham, England have the perfect midfielder to exploit this. His energy, his running, his stride length off the ball, he's just an absolute powerhouse. He is an athlete. And the way that he strides forward into these areas is absolutely brilliant. And that is the most important thing when you have a striker like Kane. We know Kane wants to drop deep, get on the ball, turn and play from there. If you're going to do that, someone needs to go past him. And Jude Bellingham is doing that brilliantly at the moment. And of course Henderson done it as well, because he was the one that got the goal. So that was absolutely brilliant from England. But in terms of England moving forward, progressing through the tournament, they do have to start a little bit quicker. Southgate needs to get those patterns developing a little bit earlier on in the game, because for 30 minutes, England really weren't very good. They were trying to force it too much. However, once England did then go to these wide areas, they just looked infinitely better. Now, I still have issues with the structure. I thought that at times Bellingham and Phil Foden were trying to take up the same position, and I think the idea was that the aim was combination play, which is what I was saying England needed in these wide areas. But the problem is, if you get really close and try and do that combination but it doesn't work, positionally, then you're really not offering very much to the team at all. At times I think Jude Bellingham needs to be used as a bit more of a runner, because we can see how dangerous he is when he does that. So I think at times Bellingham does need to push a little bit higher. He doesn't always need to be coming through the ball. Like I was saying this the other day, Jude Bellingham is so good at football that he can do every job of a midfielder. He really can. But that doesn't mean he always has to. So at times I think he needs to stretch the defence a little bit more, let someone like Foden get on the ball and turn and play, because we know how good Foden is. So that's just something that moving forward England need to tweak. In general, England were dominant in possession and sort of used a bit of a 3-1 build-up structure, because we did see Kyle Walker playing slightly deeper on the right-hand side, which we expected to see, with Declan Rice in the middle, Saka really holding the width on this right-hand side of the pitch here, Foden holding the width on the left-hand side, or no, not quite to the same extent, because we know that Phil Foden likes to come inside and get involved on the ball. But England, like I said, did eventually take control with Harry Kane in these areas, and once England had that first goal, it always felt like they were going to go on from there and probably win the game. The second goal was really impressive as well. Jude Bellingham again showing how good a midfielder he is. For me, the decision making with what he done for that second goal was absolutely brilliant, but it's also just his physicality is insane. The way he just shrugs players off him like they're not even there, like they're absolutely nothing. He just shrugs them off, drives through the pitch, but then has that decision making, finds Foden, who finds Kane, into the back of the net. England are 2-0 up, and from there it looked quite easy for England. It looked quite comfortable from that point. But I do think there were signs of what England can do a little bit better. I think they need to work the ball to Harry Kane a bit better, and more so earlier in the game. In the first half, I thought Kane was showing glimpses and he was playing well. But in the second half, he went to another level. And again, it was something that we spoke about in the preview. Because what we were saying was that if England do their wide combinations well, Senegal, especially if they're going man for man with their press, which they were at times, they're going to have to come across to this side of the pitch. And when you do that, they eventually reacted to the fact, okay, England are doing their wide combinations well, we have to get players around them in this area. What it then does is it opens up this area here in the middle of the pitch. Again, exactly what we were talking about in the preview. Exploit the wide areas, because Senegal have to react to that. Once they've then reacted to that, now can you get through the middle? And England had so many decent opportunities, got into decent positions, where Kane was getting into this area and turning on the ball. Now, before this game, people were talking about the fact that Kane hadn't scored yet at this tournament. That doesn't matter. He did have one flat game in the group stage, but in general, I think he's been absolutely brilliant. And it just proves that you don't need the goals to be a good striker. His all-round play, in this game especially, was genuinely incredible. He's playing against Koulibaly, who is a very, very, very good centre-back. A real top-level centre-back. And Kane made him look like he was absolutely nothing. The way that Kane was holding him off, shrugging him off, but then turning, and then we know about his passing range. Of course we do. And I think that's what England done really well. They built the ball down his left-hand side with the likes of Luke Shaw, Bellingham, Foden, Kane, all kind of dropping into this area, building the play, dragging Senegal over to one side of the pitch, and then with someone like Kane dropping into this area, the centre-backs follow them. We can then either have Foden running off the ball, Bellingham running off the ball in behind, or if the ball comes this way, we've now got Henderson as the runner, and of course Bukayo Saka holding the width. And in that sense, I did like the balance. I think, like I keep saying, there was certain things that England didn't do too well. The ball progression through the middle of the pitch was at times not good and at times too forced. But once England got that first goal, it seemed to really settle them. It seemed to rattle the opposition a little bit. And from there, England looked quite comfortable. I always thought they were going to win. In terms of actually the tactics, that is pretty much all I want to talk about for this video, because I don't think this was a massively tactical battle. We saw little tweaks here and there with players moving, but I don't think this was exactly a Southgate masterclass, so I haven't got too much to say on it. Like I said, England were forcing the ball too much during the early stages, but eventually they realised those wide combinations were the way forward, which is exactly what they've done and got a lot of success from it. Senegal had to react to that and try and deal with those wide situations, which then meant Harry Kane had more space in the middle of the pitch to operate, and again, Harry Kane was absolutely brilliant. So that's all I want to say on the tactics, but I do just want to talk about the midfield, because each of them were absolutely fantastic. Now, Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham was the midfield that I was crying out for before the tournament. Adding Henderson into there isn't something that I was really thinking about before the tournament, because I wanted to see perhaps a more creative player. But what he is bringing to this England team is absolutely brilliant. I think what Southgate realised in that USA game was that playing against an energetic midfield three meant that England never really had control in that game. Yes, England had possession in the game against the States at times, but they never really had true control. Since bringing Henderson in, they've now had control in 2 games. Having that extra man, but also a brilliant work rate, but also the experience, the leadership, and at the moment he's producing very good quality on the ball. He hasn't had a good season for Liverpool, but for England right now, absolutely brilliant. I thought first half, probably Henderson and Bellingham were the 2 best players on the pitch. And with Declan Rice kind of holding as the pivot, I think it's a really good midfield 3. I think Declan Rice can do a bit more in possession. I think at times he needs to make himself more available, and we'll see how he does against France. I think, right, we will come on to that later in the week. I do think England will get time on the ball against France, but I do also think you are going to have to go with this midfield 3, unless there's a change of formation, which again we'll come on to later in the week. I think this midfield 3 has done so well in the last 2 games that you probably now have to stick with them, because they have been very impressive. They have now controlled 2 games in a row, and we've seen Jordan Henderson scoring, we've seen Bellingham scoring, but also getting assists. It's just a really nice balance to it, and the amount of duels they win is absolutely incredible. And I think that's why Southgate likes them, why he trusts them, and now we just have to wait and see, will he trust them in the next round. In terms of for this game, England were good. I'm not going to say brilliant, they were good. They were good from the 30th minute to about the 70th minute. England had a really good spell where they were really on top, really intense with the way that they played, really direct. We saw the quality from Phil Foden, who we haven't even really spoken about too much in this video. Phil Foden, another player, absolutely brilliant, probably earned himself a starting spot in the next game. Overall, England absolutely deserved their win, but I do think they will need to be a bit sharper, a bit sooner in the game going forward. But if that happens or not, we're going to have to wait and see. Anyway, that's all I've got time for today. That's all I really want to speak about, because like I said, it wasn't a massively tactical battle, but I still want to cover it because England have gone through the knockouts, which doesn't always happen, so I want to cover it when it does happen. But that's all I've got to say. Thank you guys for watching, I hope you have enjoyed the video, and as always, I will see you in the next one.